Hello, thank you so much for watching Coffee with Keep Arizona Blue Student Coalition. My name is Claire McCartan, and I'm the digital director of this organization. Today, I have the honor to be sitting down with the Assistant Minority Leader of the Arizona House of Representatives, Oscar de los Santos. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Claire. I could not be more excited to be here and to have a little coffee with Keep Arizona Blue.
Yes, we love it. Okay, let's jump into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Perfect. So my first question for you today is, what is the accomplishment you are most proud of during your time as a representative?
That's a really good question, and there's a lot to be proud of. I think I'm proud of the way I ran my campaign and making sure it was powered for people and not for corporate profits. I was proud that I ran as a clean elections candidate and rejected all money from lobbyists and corporate entities. And so I was proud of that, and I'm frankly proud of the legislation I introduced as well. I mean, this was big, ambitious legislation to protect our environment, to bring down the cost of housing. And these are things that some of these pieces of legislation had never been introduced before. And so I was very proud of that. But I think the main thing would have been, frankly, the way I stood up to some of the far right extremists in the legislature. You know, as a freshman coming into the legislature, sometimes you're told to sit back or to wait your turn or to learn the ropes before you speak, sort of thing. But the fact is that we're in a moment in history where we can't afford to sit back, where we can't afford to stay quiet. And so I was proud to go toe to toe on behalf of my constituents against some of the extremists who are trying to rip their rights away, whether that's the right to vote or the right to their bodily autonomy. I was proud to stand up and say, hell no. And so, that's something that I certainly didn't take lightly.
Yes, I love to hear that. So next question, what challenges do you believe young voters in Arizona face when it comes to participating in elections?
Yeah, well, I think there's three things. One of them is perhaps the most obvious, that in Arizona, unlike many states, Arizona actually bans student ID as a form of voter ID, which just makes it much more difficult to actually exercise the right to vote. So that's number one. Number two, I think we're seeing a lot of attacks and misinformation and disinformation that's targeted at young people. And so, there's all kinds of conspiratorial lies that are being spread, particularly online, where young people spend a lot of time about, hey, Carrie Lake's actually the real governor, all sorts of nonsense. And so I think that's particularly dangerous. But frankly, I think the attacks on young people go even deeper than that. We know that one Republican presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, is so terrified of the power that young people have that he and many Republicans are proposing an extraordinary and extreme constitutional amendment that would raise the voting age from 18 to 25. It's outrageous. It's ridiculous. I
Yes.
mean, the idea that you can own a gun, that you can fight in America's wars, but that you can't have a say in America's leaders is
Yeah.
dangerous. It's horrifying, and it's evidence of the fact that the far right is terrified of people like you.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's definitely something that Keep Arizona Blue is working on because, like you said, like that right should never be taken away from anyone. Especially like you said, we can go to war, we can do all of these things, but we can't vote. So definitely. Moving on, in your opinion, what are key issues that resonate the most with young voters in Arizona, and how can legislators like you address these issues to boost youth turnout?
That's a really good question, and I think there's a ton of different issues that appeal to young people. One of the things I've
Yeah.
been very conscious of is like that young people are not a monolith, right? Young people are diverse in all kinds of ways, and so sometimes it's the climate crisis and the need to make sure that we have a habitable planet and that we have water in the future in Arizona that excites people. Other times people are very into voting rights or economic justice, or a lot of young people are frankly having trouble buying a house. And for
Yeah.
one of the first times in the history of this country, it's probable that young people are going to be worse off than their parents economically, despite the fact that they're better educated. And so, it could be different issues for different people, but the thing that I found that motivates all young people, no matter like what issues you may care about, is reminding young people that you have the power to change this country. That kind of immense power your generation gets to wield, because the fact is that in the next 5 years, Gen Z and millennials combined are going to make up an outright majority of the American electorate. And so we have to remind young people that if we act at the ballot box, registering to vote, actually going to vote, participating in marches, going to protests, joining organizations, you can change this country, and you can change it for the better. And that is power that you have.
Yes, I totally agree. We just got to meet these young people at where they are, basically.
Absolutely.
And so while preparing for this episode, I discovered that you worked in the Obama administration. What did you learn from working with President Obama, and how did that experience shape your leadership style today?
That's a really good question. And so actually I had the honor of working for President Obama in two different capacities. So the first time was as an organizer on his campaign. I was a freshman in high school. And so this is the summer between freshman year and sophomore year. I was 18 years old and had applied for this internship with the Obama campaign in his headquarters, which were in Chicago. And I got it. And it was exciting, and it was something so new. And so this was the farthest I'd ever been from home, honestly. And so I went to Chicago and got to work there, actually doing outreach to Latino voters. And by the end of the internship, my boss was like, "Hey, you should take next semester off and you should become an organizer during GOTV." And on the spot, I said, absolutely. And so I actually took a semester off and worked in Florida, which was a big battleground state, and worked in Fort Lauderdale in Broward County, which was then one of the biggest battleground counties. Now it's Maricopa County, which is exciting.
Yes.
But I was an organizer, and I was leading one of the president's offices in one of the biggest counties and one of the biggest battleground states. And what it taught me was that young people should be trusted with leadership positions, because that's what the president and the president's staff entrusted me with. And it was the honor of a lifetime. And it kind of just told me, I'm 18, I don't have a college degree yet, I don't come from money, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and yet I felt I was making a difference. And that's what it taught me, that you don't have to be rich or famous or powerful to make a difference. Like, every citizen, every human being can make a difference. And that's what I learned.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear you say that, honestly. I love that. Okay, so now we're moving on to the fun questions. So you're kind of out of the hot seat. But since we're having coffee, what is your go-to coffee order?
So my go-to is, actually, I didn't drink coffee for the first 25, 26 years of my life. But when I did, I went all in. It was, and it remains, black iced coffee, no cream, no sugar, no sweetener.
Very simple. I see.
Yep.
Next question for you is, as you know, September is Hispanic Heritage Month. Can you tell me a little bit about what this month means to you, and how do you celebrate it?
Yeah, so it means a lot, to be honest with you. My parents are both immigrants from Mexico. They were born in a tiny, tiny little town that has 5,000-6,000 people in it. They've known each other since birth. Their parents knew each other. Their grandparents knew each other. So that heritage is important to me, and it courses through my veins. And for me, it's a time of reflection about my family's journey and the opportunities that this country has given us.
That's awesome. I love to hear you say that. So last question for you. What book are you currently reading, or what is a book on your list that you want to get to?
Yeah, so it's a book that I'm rereading. It's called Song in a Weary Throat. and it's an autobiography written by somebody called Polly Murray, who
Okay.
is, or she was, she's passed now. She was not very well known in her life, and she remains a little bit of an obscure historical figure, but she is, to put it in one word, a badass. And so she was a pioneer of the civil rights movement. She was a lawyer, she was an activist, she was a priest, she was a poet,
Wow.
and she was actually the first Black woman to graduate from Yale Law School, which is, one of the
Oh my
nation's
goodness.
top schools in the country. She
Yeah.
co-authored legal briefs in alongside Ruth Bader Ginsburg to fight for women's rights. She was a co-founder of the National Organization for Women, one of the earliest members of the ACLU, and she went on to write this like phenomenal piece of legal research that Justice Thurgood Marshall, the first Black U.S. Supreme Court justice, called the quote Bible of the Civil Rights Movement.
Wow.
And so Polly was, a phenomenally intelligent person whose story has been lost to history in a lot of ways because she was a Black
Yeah.
woman. And so, rediscovering that has been huge. Faith plays a big role in my life, and the fact that she was a priest is
Hmm.
important. And so now, actually, there's a little portrait of Polly Murray on my
Aw,
desk in the legislature. So, a very
that's
impactful
awesome.
person in my life.
That's, oh, I have to add that to my list. That sounds really good, like a good read.
You should, absolutely.
Well,
You should.
yes, definitely. Well, I want to thank you again for sitting down with me and having these really important conversations. I do appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you for having me. This was fantastic. And if you're
Yes.
watching, make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your family and your friends are registered
Yes.
to vote, and go out there and let's get it done.
Yes, of course. I second that. To everyone watching, thank you so much, and I'll see you next month. Goodbye.